Disclaimer. Opinions expressed are those of the content creators and do not represent any employer or entity. The information shared is for informational purposes only and should not be construed as medical advice or used in any legal capacity, including establishing standards of care. All efforts have been made to comply with HIPAA regulations. No guarantees are made regarding the accuracy of statements or opinions provided. Interaction with the podcast does not establish a doctor-patient relationship. Please enjoy this podcast responsibly.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Paw Patrol with your host, Dr. Jeff Dikis. Today I am joined by a first-year resident in Indianapolis, Dr. Savannah Santiago. Thanks for joining me today.
I'm so happy to be here. I'm a big fan of the podcast.
Thanks. Yeah, appreciate that. So tell us what you've been up to. You're a first-year resident in Indianapolis, so Life is kind of hectic these days. What have you been up to?
Yeah, hectic is definitely a good word for it. So I'm at Ascension St. Vincent in Indianapolis. My program director is Dr. Patrick DeHeer. So I haven't been up to much beyond residency. So I started July 1st. I moved here to Indianapolis in mid-June. I'm about 2 months into residency, which is crazy to even imagine. I've done about a month of call so far. Which has just meant exponential growth and learning. And then I just started one of my off-service rotations this past week. So I'm helping in our wound care clinic. So I'm doing everything wounds right now. So I saw a lot of sacral wounds today, but I'm learning a lot.
Eesh. Didn't sign up for that, did you?
Yeah, I still like it. And I think it translates really well. And little tips and tricks for other parts of the body have taught me a lot of different things that we can try for the foot and ankle.
Yeah, that's interesting because a lot of the wound care protocols are the same, regardless of the body part. I mean, some of them are harder to get to. Those are harder to evaluate.
Yeah.
You know, the foot, we take it for granted. It kind of hangs off the end of the table. It's wide open. You know, you can see all aspects of it. But I definitely remember back in residency on my plastic surgery rotation, some of that stuff is just, woof. You're excited to get back to the foot.
Oh, yeah. No, I definitely feel a lot of gratitude for podiatry. I mean, I trimmed a patient's toenails and they asked me why I was smiling. And I was just excited that I knew how to do something and that I could help in a meaningful way.
I can contribute.
Today we had this giant, and it was actually a breast wound from radiation from cancer. Mm-hmm. And the provider used an otoscope to look into the tunneling of the wound. And I was like, that is so brilliant. Like, if you can't get good light, you can't really see inside of it. She used the otoscope to actually look in. And I was like, I would totally do that to a foot if it was like a big, deep tunneling wound or a lower leg wound. So
it's interesting.
Yeah.
That's the benefit of residency, I think, is when you go on these off-service rotations, you know, we would do vascular and plastics and ortho and all these things. And you pick up all these things. We're doing a, distal radius fracture. Well, the distal radius isn't that different from an ankle. Structurally, yes, but like two bones.
The ankle of the arm.
Yeah, exactly. I'm sure they'd love to have it be known as that. But you pick up all these tips and tricks. So, had you ever been to Indianapolis before because you're from California originally?
Yeah, so I'm from San Diego. It's actually Dr. DeHeer's favorite thing to brag about is that he got me to move to Indiana, being from San Diego. So I was born and raised in San Diego. I went to Colorado for undergrad. So I did leave California at some point. I went to University of Colorado in Colorado Springs for undergrad. I loved it there. And then I went back to California, went to Western for podiatry school. I always said I was open to going anywhere if it meant for great training. I didn't think that the Midwest was going to be where I ended up, but I am just thrilled to be here. I did do an externship here. So I spent a month here in June of my 4th year. And it kind of took me surprise how much I loved the program, how much I loved Indianapolis. The specific area of Indianapolis where I live is Carmel. And it's such a cute little town. There's a big trail that goes through the entire city itself. There's a farmer's market that I'm a frequent of. So I've definitely integrated into the community. I'm part of a run club now who has named me the Run Club Podiatrist already.
Nice.
So I love Indianapolis. I actually really like the Midwest. The people here are so kind. Lots of jokes about how well I fit into the Midwest because I'll just start talking to people at the grocery store. Make friends at coffee shops, that kind of thing. So I'm having a good time out here. But I visited during my externship. And that's what I kind of was like, wow, this is a great program. And it really opened my eyes to if I'm really willing to move anywhere, and I'm lucky to have a really supportive boyfriend and family that said, yeah, if that's where you're going to get the best training, then go for it. And now I'm out here, and it's been great.
Yeah, that's what we did too. When we packed up and moved to Pittsburgh, we were like, we just got to get the best training for us.
Yeah.
But interestingly, we were very close to picking that program, Indianapolis.
Yeah.
So my wife's from Indiana, and we rotated through there. As you said that, I think I rotated through June of my fourth year in Indies. So shout out to Dr. Winters, who is still there and let me do my first case ever. So Dr. Winters, if you're listening, I never forgot you let me do a toe amp as a fourth year. And so I appreciated that. And then my buddy Nathan Graves is one of your attendings as well.
Oh, yeah.
So
Dr. Graves is one of my favorites. He has a super busy clinic, super busy surgical schedule, and he teaches us residents a ton about billing, CPT codes, running your own practice. I mean, he is just a wealth of knowledge, and we are so lucky to have him. Dr. Stewart here was my first toe amp as well. So I definitely felt very supported, encouraged by this program when I was a student, and that is just amplified by 100 times being a resident as well.
Good. And that's what you want. You want it to actually turn out to be what you thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
Because as a month with 1 month rotations, you get a flavor for it, but a lot of times there's, things behind the scenes, and then you find out later, oh, those two actually don't get along, or, they hate each other. Like, what? I didn't know that. Anyway, so it's good to know that, it is what you thought that it was going to be.
Yeah.
So going back a little bit, learning the billing and coding things, I think is a very undervalued component of residency. I remember being taught that on our private practice rotations and kind of thinking, when's lunch? When am I going to get home? This stuff is boring. And then you get out and you're thinking, wow, I should have listened a lot closer, because I remember some of it, but I could have picked up on a lot more of that stuff and used it every day. So don't let billing and coding be, don't let it be overwhelming, because it can be, because there's a lot going on there.
Right.
But I think that's one of the undervalued components of residency. So anyone listening who's in residency or going into residency, pay attention to that stuff.
No, I definitely agree. I mean, I'm 2 months in, and I feel very intimidated by it, but nothing's more exciting than I finish my clinic note and I put in what I think the billing is, and then I check with whatever provider I'm with, and they're like, you got it. Had my 25 modifier, had everything in, I get stoked.
You're ahead of the game then, because I think there's attendings out there who don't know how to do 25 modifiers, and they just have a billing person, and they take care of all that. Well,
there's another way to do it.
Yeah, for sure. So what rotations, where did you plan your rotation? So take us back to, you were a student at Western and you were picking your rotation. So for anyone listening who is trying to start thinking through that process, what helped you pick those rotations?
Yeah, so I will give a disclaimer that now that I'm a resident and I'm looking back to how I was as a student, I think I was a little insane. What I did is I went through the clerkship hand guide, and I literally went through every single program. And I looked through, and my initial thing that I was looking at is like, I wanted to know whether or not the program, like how many residents they took. I knew that I wanted to be at a program that was more than just one resident. I like to think that I'm somewhat social, so it would be nice to get to hang out with my co-residents, that kind of thing. And I wanted a little bit smaller of a program. So I think I was willing to go all the way up to 6 per year. I also spoke to faculty members and was like, do you think that there's a program that could be a really good fit for me? Is there anything that you, like anyone that you know, or that you think would be something that facilitates my interest really well? So I talked to my attendings, I talked to my faculty members. I went through the clerkship guide, and I made a list of, I think, like 45 programs. And I went in and I emailed the program coordinator for every single one and said, is there a resident that I can talk to, or are you coming to my school for residency fair? Like, I want to know more about your program. And then I either scheduled a phone call or just texted a resident after I had like already asked around and found out about a good portion of the programs. A little bit more about when they finish their numbers, any specific focus, where the program's located, the general vibes of the program, that kind of thing. And I narrowed it down to, I think, 15 like programs that I was super interested in. At Western, we do 7 externships, which is a ton. I mean, we got a lot of exposure. And then I also visited programs. So when I was still a third year was when I visited my first program. I asked all of these programs when I emailed them initially if they had academics that students could join. And I started going to their academics so I could learn a little bit about the program, as well as I could learn myself. I mean, as a third year, I think there is a really stark shift in the type of knowledge that you have going from preclinical to clinical. And I mean, it's super exciting. I love being in the clinic. I think it's completely different than sitting in a classroom. And so kind of starting to prep my mind for that next kind of knowledge. It does come with a preface. Some of the programs had me join their academics, and I was getting pimped as a third year. Didn't really know anything.
Whoops.
And that's scary.
Yeah.
So I do think I overdid it a little bit by like that amount of contact and that amount of exposure early on. But I did know going into every single externship, I had talked to at least one resident from their program already, and they knew who I was at least a little bit going in because I had attended their academics or I had talked to a resident. So I think that was beneficial.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you narrow that down finally to you just found the 8 that felt the most, the best for you and went for it?
So part of it was just applying to it. There was one program that I thought was going to be like the love of my life. If we were on The Bachelorette, like I was going to give them the final rose, and they actually didn't accept me for an externship. And I was heartbroken. I had attended their academics. They told me they liked me. I believed them. And they didn't take me as an extern. And I really thought it was a reflection of me as a student. And it absolutely wasn't. It was just how the months played out. And looking back on that now, I can 100% see that. I still interviewed with them. I still visited their program. I think it's an awesome program. I have a friend who's there. So I think the actual application process itself narrowed it down. I also tried to plan my externships. That way it was geographically made sense. Didn't end up making a lot of geographic sense. So part of it was applying. Part of it was just talking to faculty and being like, do you think this program is a good fit for me? And then being like, that program tends to be a little bit of a boys club, or that program is a little bit more focused on this. And I think you might like this program more. And that helps me narrow it down a little bit more.
I think you bring up a good point there. So, going back to when I was a resident and we were trying to pick the students who would come on an externship, it was kind of a free for all.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know how many people applied.
Yeah.
It was probably well over 100.
Right.
And you're shuffling through these portfolios and these statements and these things, and you're just like, I don't know. They have a 3.5 at this school and they have a 3.6 at that school and they have this and they have that. How can I compare these people? At the end of the day, it was kind of like that one and then that one. I don't know. And so, but that meant that you didn't pick someone who could have been a really good extern or a really good resident. And, they're on the other end thinking, like you mentioned, I didn't get an externship.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with you. It was just, I'm tired. I want to go home. Pick that one. I don't care. Who cares? Let's move on.
I remember calling my mom, sobbing and being like my future is over. They hate me. And it had nothing to do with me. I still interviewed with them. I had a great interview with them. I still liked their program. Everything works out for a reason. And I think as people in the medical field, we can be really, really hard and self-critical. And that's one of the moments that I look back on. And I was a great student. It was probably just someone maybe had a little bit higher of a GPA. Maybe they liked their name more than my name. I mean, it doesn't matter at the end of the day.
Well, even then, I mean, we would have students that are 4.0s show up and I'd meet them for 5 minutes and be like, nope, I do not like this person. So you can't even go off a GPA. You can't go off of anything. They almost need to do a little 5-minute blurb or a 5-minute video or something that you can toss on there. I mean, we live in the digital age. There's no reason you can't do a little video and I could watch it. And in 5 minutes, I can be like, yeah, or no.
The whole just be normal thing, now that I'm a resident, is so real. That is a very real thing that students think we say to give them half done advice, but it just be a normal person, and it goes a really long way.
Unfortunately, some people don't have control over that. They don't have the normal button. They can't turn that on. So, yeah. Anyways, so you are, the way I came across you is you are doing a blog on Present Podiatry called Sole Purpose.
Yes.
And so tell us about that and how you got involved in starting that.
Yeah. So that actually, I give a lot of credit to one of my faculty mentors, Dr. Jared Shapiro, who also writes a blog for Present Podiatry. And I religiously read his blog every single Tuesday night. all of podiatry school. I mean, I really, really look up to Dr. Shapiro. And I was reading his blog, and he had just written his 500th article, I think. I like did the math, and I was like, oh my gosh, he's been writing blogs since he was in residency. And I was like, I really like writing, and I had already written a couple of articles. I wrote one with Dr. Dahir, my now residency director, and I wrote one for Dr. Shapiro's blog about why students should choose podiatry. And I always have really liked writing, and so I was like, I bet I could write an article every week. So I kind of reached out to Dr. Shapiro. I asked what the general parameters are for his articles, and I started just writing an article every single week. And I did that for 6 weeks. And I was actually doing 2 a week while I was on my rotations in my 4th year. And so I just had this crazy idea of like, I think I can do this. I think I have that gene that it's like, if I think I can do it, then I'm just like, I just got to do it. I just got to try. So, and then I emailed Dr. Shapiro and was like, hey, I have 12 articles that I've written. I've been doing this for the last 6 weeks. I think I could write a column for Present too. Do you know if they're looking for anyone? Do you know if they will be looking for anyone? Do you have any advice for how I could get this out there? And he was like, sure enough, they actually really want to hire someone new. And so I sent them my CV, I interviewed with them, and they were like, oh my gosh, you're a student. And I was like, yeah, I'm a student. And they are just amazing. Dr. Sherman's been absolutely lovely. So they hired me on, and I was really, really nervous of my first couple blog posts. I still feel like only my mom is the one who reads my blog. But it's been a really fun journey so far. I think I have about 40 articles written. I think I've had 21 published so far, something around there. And so it's been a really great experience. It's great I get to talk to people like you. I mean, it's really blown me away how much exposure it's given me and all the things that I've learned from getting to write these blogs, and just the little tidbits that I'm able to share, and people being like, oh, I never thought of it that way, or like, I wasn't exposed to this. So it's been a fun journey.
Yeah, they're really good, and I think they give students and then early residents some relatable material, because it's always nice to know that there's someone similar to you going through the same thing, and they're having the same experiences. In one of the articles you talked about imposter syndrome.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, and my wife and I kind of have talked about that on a previous episode, and how she kind of has dealt with that in the past. And so I think it's nice to have that out there as another resource for people to hear that, and to know that, oh yeah, so I've used this analogy before, but it's kind of like when you're sitting in class and you have a question and you think, well, everyone else knows that. I can't answer. I can't raise my hand. I'm gonna look like an idiot. And then someone else raises their hand, and then everyone else is like, oh yeah, I had that question too. So it kind of is helpful to have one person take the lead and show that you're not the only one dealing with those things. So I found one of the articles that you'd written. You kind of described your most embarrassing moments on rotations. You want to talk about a couple of those?
Yeah, I would be happy to. These are one of the things that I see a lot of value in is I don't want a student or anyone to ever look at me and think that like I think I'm so high and mighty. I mean, I know that I don't think that about myself, but I think admitting to our errors, I think it's really hard. We had a recent M&M and residency, and one of my chiefs actually stood up and admitted to some of the errors he's made in the OR. And for me as an intern, it like just felt like I was like, people make mistakes. Like it's not just me. So I really wanted to
all of us
students and be like, listen, like I made all these mistakes on externships, and I thought it was the end of the world every single time. Like I very dramatically had a breakdown, probably called my mom, and I matched with my #1 residency. I was very fortunate to have different options for residency, and everything ended up fine. So one of the biggest ones, which I still think is one of the most embarrassing things of my entire life, is I was at this residency program that I was really interested in. And it was a great program. I was really nervous. It was my first day. I was working with the director. And the month before, I had had a hair crisis. I had bought hair toner from Target that was supposed to make my hair less brassy. And it dyed my hair like black. So I looked nothing like my photo. And I walk into the clinic, and the program director looks at me and goes, "Who are you?" And I say, "Hi, I'm Savannah Santiago. I'm a 4th year from Western." And he was like, why don't you look like your photo? And I then had to explain, like, I dyed my hair with this stuff from Target and it turned my hair black. And that's why I look like this. And then we proceeded to have a social interview where he was like, let's do some social interview questions. I want to get to know you. And I was like, yeah, I'm super pumped. And we did this during lunch. And one of the things I talk about a lot is I'm actually diabetic. And it's part of what makes me love podiatry and be so happy to be part of our podiatry community. And so I have to eat. I'm very, very good about controlling my blood sugar. This is almost never an issue. But I do have to do a good job. I was so stressed with my new externship. It was a time difference of, I think, 3 hours from where I had been. I was really tired. And I'd eaten breakfast that morning, and I'd eaten a granola bar right before the social interview. So I'd eaten, so I thought my blood sugar was fine. I didn't feel shaky. I wasn't sweating. So I didn't have any of my normal symptoms. I do the social interview, and they asked me, like, what is your biggest flaw? And I was like, my biggest flaw is that I don't prioritize myself. Like, I am more than willing to take care of everyone around me. I'm willing to work however many hours it means to get the job done, but I don't like to take care of myself. But, you know, you're always told to turn it into a positive. And I was like, but because I'm diabetic, like, one, not only does it give me a great way to connect with patients and a great way to help patients and educate them, but it forces me to take care of myself. And so since my diagnosis being diabetes, it's forced me to, like, you know, I have to make sure that I eat. I have some responsibility for myself, because if I don't take care of myself, something bad could happen to me, or it could compromise patient care, because I have to take a break because I didn't get ahead of it. And like I said, like, blood sugar has never been an issue for me. Like, it's been fine. It's never been an issue in the clinic. Like, I'm okay. We go and we see a patient, and they're a Spanish-speaking patient. And another thing is, I worked as a translator before podiatry school. I speak fluent Spanish. It's one of my favorite qualities in the entire world. I love the Hispanic community. I'm half Hispanic, so that's also a big thing to me. And so I'm stoked. It's a Spanish-speaking patient. Like, I'm ready to go. This is best case scenario. Speaking Spanish, I'm translating. I did a great physical exam, and I'm presenting. And I, like, started sweating, and I was like, okay, my sugar's a little low. I know my sugar's a little low, but, like, I can get through it. I'll eat a granola bar as soon as I get out. My bag is, like, full of different snacks. I'm ready to go. And I'm speaking Spanish, and then all of a sudden, like, I just hit the floor. I hit the floor. I passed out cold.
Jeez.
My blood sugar just bottomed out of nowhere. I still, to this day, like, I think it had to have been stress induced, because my sugar was fine. And they like dragged me into the hallway.
Oh my
They
gosh.
were like, go get a granola bar. Or like, they get me like some juice, and I'm like, I'm fine, I'm fine. I promise I can finish the patient encounter. Like, I'm totally okay. They're like, no, like, go eat something and then you can back. And I come back, and it was just a really bummer way to start the month, because then every time I was in surgery with the director, he was like, are you sure you can be in surgery, or do you need to go eat? And I was like, I promise I'm fine. Like, this doesn't happen. I just told you that this is a flaw.
Yeah.
And I was just mortified. Like, absolutely mortified. And I still interviewed with the program. They still liked me by the grace of God. I still really liked them, and it was totally fine. And I think I was really the only one who ended up embarrassed out of that. But
Yeah. That's a tough first day.
It was a really tough first day.
Yeah. Did you at least go down gently, or
I
you
went
just
down
blacked
gently.
out and you didn't know?
I felt myself getting really low, and so I like started to sit down on the floor. So I like just kind of like plopped.
Well, that's good, at least.
Embarrassing. Has never happened to me ever again. I actually normally wear a continuous glucose monitor, so normally I would beep before any of that would happen. But my insurance had just stopped covering them for me because my A1C was too well controlled. Yeah, I had a nice call to my primary doctor, and was like,
love that.
Get these covered right away.
That's crazy. I had a student in the OR with us one time who, it wasn't even a podiatry student. I think they were shadowing to see if they were going to be interested in podiatry, and they were kind of standing off behind us, and no one was really paying attention to them. They were just standing off behind us. We were doing surgery, just kind of doing our own thing. And all of a sudden we hear this like, bam. And this kid, his head hit the floor. Like he passed out and just went like, boom, all the way on the ground. It was like, what was that? And they had to like stretcher him out, take him to the ER, head CT. It was nutso. So
no, it was very soft. I was absolutely fine.
At least you went down gently.
There was no blood. There was there's no question that I can handle blood and guts. It was It was definitely a diabetes thing, but
it's still embarrassing for you. But I've had students pass out or feel like they're gonna pass out. Like, doesn't bother me at all.
Yeah. So that's a bummer, but happens to the best of us. And I mean, we talked about it in my interview. I was like, yeah, that was the most embarrassing day of my entire life. Yeah. So I call it a diabetes attack. Was definitely super embarrassing. Another one that was like a really unfortunate situation is I was at another program. No, actually, I was at this same program, and I wear like the stoggles, like the goggles in the OR. And for whatever reason, I guess my nose was just really oily that day, and my stoggles kept like slipping down. They never fell off me. They never fell into the body cavity. I heard rumors from my classmates, because I posted a silly picture later that day, that my goggles fell into a body cavity. This isn't Grey's Anatomy. That didn't happen.
Body cavity.
They were sliding down, and they were like really irritating the surgeon. And he kept being like, will you put your glasses up? Will you put your glasses up? Because he was really nervous about it. And finally, the OR nurse goes and gets bright white tape and tapes it from like the bridge of here to the top of my head, and was like, just don't take it off for the rest of the day. And for the rest of the month, I did that to my goggles every single day. And so there's this funny picture of me eating a burrito in the locker room with like my goggles taped to my face. But that was another one where I was like, oh my gosh. But after, she like pulled me aside and was like, don't worry, everyone's first time in the OR is like really tough. And I was like almost at the end of my 4th year externships, and I was like, yeah, it's like my 1000th time in the OR.
Yeah, that's funny.
So, what are you gonna do?
I remember lots of students, not because of them, but because of things like that. Yeah. I remember being told one time that at another program I rotated through, they were just telling me, hey, don't be like this kid. We had a kid one time, this is them telling me, we had a kid one time who we were all in the OR, we were all scrubbed in, and the attending was doing something and was feeling something deep inside. And then the attending said, hey, okay, feel that. Okay, everybody, come on, stick your finger in. And out of nowhere, they feel this like finger from a student with no gloves on, not scrubbed in, his finger come in from across the room and put their finger right into the wound inside the foot. And they're just like, are you kidding me? Did that just happen? So yeah, you remember things like that when that's not a good one to be remembered for. So,
I doubt they even remembered it. I doubt it was a big deal. But like, I remember going home and being like, I am the worst. I'm not going to match anywhere.
Yeah. Nah, it all works itself out, because at the end, you don't remember. Good people can overcome those things. Bad people tend to just continue to do weird and bad things. Yeah. So you said you've been on call. Why don't you tell anybody listening who's interested what call is like as a first-year resident at your program?
Yeah, so I'm here at Ascension St. Vincent in Indianapolis. So we only take call at one hospital. So we actually have privileges at over 20 different hospitals and surgical centers in the area, but we actually only take call at St. Vincent's off 86th Street, which is our main hospital. It's a level 1 trauma center.
It's a nice hospital.
Huge. It's a super nice hospital. Yeah. And we have a resident room in the basement. It has a couch that we all sleep on. It's really great. But so we take 9 weeks of call as a first year and 4 weeks of call as a second year and no call as a third year. Originally, when I was looking at residency programs, I was like, I really want to take call as a third year. And I think I'm going to need to take a lot of call as a third year. Now that I'm an intern, I think I will be good on being on call by the time I'm done with second year. I think it's okay. That third year,
you're willing to let it go.
Yeah, it's going to be okay. But so we take 9 weeks of call. We do 24/7 call for an entire week. So we do handoff at 5 p.m. on Friday, and then it's Friday to Friday. I really like that. The way that we do handoff is, so like whoever's coming before us will like print out a list. They'll send an email with the details of all of the patients. Obviously, we'll be cognizant of HIPAA and all of that kind of stuff. And then usually I'll also talk to the resident on the phone and be like, is there anything that I like need to know on like the down low? Like I just had a patient whose like daughter was like a really aggressive lawyer. And like, that was just something that like I needed to know to like give this patient the best care possible, to like be really cognizant of like his daughter's going to grow me and like have a really good attitude, have answers to her questions, know his labs really well, and that kind of thing. So when we take call, I had a extra learning opportunity first call week. We had a longer list than usual. And it was just a really, really busy week. And it was my first week on call. So we don't do buddy call where like there's someone physically in the hospital with me. But my second years and my third years and my chiefs are like very readily available. So if I did have a question, I would like send a message in our intern group message. And if none of us knew, then it would be like, I'd call my chief or I would call one of the second years. And like someone was always there to help me if I needed it, but no one was physically there with me the entire time. I actually I didn't like it in the moment, but I like that we did it that way because it really forced me to step into the role of like, I'm the doctor and I need to be making these decisions. And if I need to ask for backup, I can ask for backup. And I am not prideful enough to say, I don't know how to do something and I don't want to harm a patient. So that's how we do it. So if you have any inpatient surgeries, then you do those inpatient surgeries in the hospital that week. That's your responsibility. You only do call during your week. So you're not bouncing around at clinic or driving to other surgical centers unless we have a sister hospital in Carmel, which is about 15 minutes from the other hospital. One of our core attendings, we have 4 core attendings, does surgery there for his inpatients there. Sometimes we'll pop over there. He knows that my apartment is like very close to the hospital. So he'll just text me and be like, hey, I need you at Carmel. And I help a little bit extra there. So we do our call week there. Our main responsibilities is, so a typical day would be I maybe get there at like 6 o'clock in the morning, assuming I didn't get called overnight or the ED didn't page me overnight. I get there at 6 o'clock in the morning. I print out the list. I run the list. I check everyone's labs. I make sure, like I make a to-do list of things that I need to order, things that I need to check. I check who I need to do bandage changes on. I have organized buckets with all of our wound supplies in the resident office. So I like went through the entire office and organized everything so it was easy to find. And then I get all the supplies ready. Assuming I don't have a student with me, then I just carry the bucket myself. I go and I round, and then I might have a case at 7:30 in the morning. I might have one at lunch, or I might have add-ons in the afternoon. I round, I update all of my attendings. I like to check on most of the patients every single day. And then once I'm done with rounding, I write all of my notes. If, let's say, theoretically, I have no consults, then I can go home after that if I have no surgeries. Sometimes I'll pop over to clinic and see if they need anyone, or if I want to see one of my post-ops in clinic. But that's typically it. And then the ED knows me well. So they'll like call my personal phone and be like, hey, Savannah, we have a podiatry patient in the ED. And I'll go see consults in the ED. If we have a consult at our Carmel hospital, I'll also go see that. If we have patients at our Carmel hospital, I might go around there. But it's not necessarily required of our program. And then that's pretty much it. So it's very typical of a call week. It's very nice that we're only at that one location because it doesn't have us running around to different hospitals. And the hospital itself is really great. We have pretty good relationships with the other teams.
Good. Yeah, you're bringing back a lot of bad memories of call and all that stuff. My call is, if I have one inpatient, I'm not very happy because I have to round on my one patient.
Yeah.
So you're bringing back a lot of memories of lists and printing out things and check boxes. I remember all that stuff. You're bringing back a lot of bad memories.
Yeah, my color-coded pen is like very crucial for call because I have different colors for different things.
Yeah. So it keeps you busy, but it's learning. It's a lot of learning. Other good person to talk to are the nurses. So
I love our nurses.
The good nurses are extremely helpful.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they know that you're new and they know that they know more than you. And if you're nice to them and you ask them kindly, hey, what do we normally do for this? They'll tell you, and they're right.
We, my first day, like July 1st, I was helping my co-resident on call because I was done with my responsibilities and I was just helping her out. And we had an arterial bleed. And it was her and I, and it was like pulsatile bleeding across the room. The patient had lost so much blood that like we all were covered. And we were just both standing there. And like I remember like holding pressure and I was like shaking. And the ICU nurse was like, honey, do you want some chicken tenders? And I was like, yeah, that would be great. And like they got me lunch for like once I finished helping with this bleeder, and it was so nice.
It is like Grey's Anatomy.
Yeah.
No bombs,
though. It was a
though.
very Grey's Anatomy moment where they were like, can someone get the doctor? And she and I both were like, we're the doctors.
Yeah. That was like when my wife gave birth to our second son. It was very quickly, happened overnight, and I could tell he was born in July. Unfortunately, we didn't plan that very well. And we could tell who had not been there but maybe 3 weeks, 2.5 weeks. And I was like, you're brand new. You thing says physician, but her and I, the lady giving birth right now, we are the only real doctors in this room right now.
Yeah.
And you're like, can you call someone else? Is there anyone else?
Right.
So it's fun to be the doctor when you show up, which is true, but you're like, I'm not experienced enough to be handling this situation. Let's get someone else with some more experience.
One of our second years came and helped us, and then we got a hold of the attending quickly. So everything ended up being totally fine. But
yeah, and it's nice to have residents on the ground because they do help with a lot of that stuff. So so let's go back a little bit. So another kind of one of your blog posts was talking about tips for successful fourth year.
Yeah.
So what would you tell a third year who's about to start, or maybe a fourth year that's in the middle of the fourth year, or anybody listening? What are your tips for a successful fourth year externships?
I think one of them is like to just like be open to any type of learning. So I think now that I work with students a lot more, and I'll have an article written on this, like students from a resident perspective, like just being open to like any type of learning. Like I had a student complain to me recently that they like didn't get to scrub a case. And I was like, like I hear you, and I hear that can be frustrating, but like you should be able to learn from being anywhere. Like if I'm in wound care clinic with like my hand up a sacral wound, then like, and I'm choosing to like see that as a learning opportunity that's going to help me be a better podiatrist, then like you can learn from observing surgery. And so it's like being willing to learn in any type of environment, having a really good attitude. Like my favorite types of students who like show up and work with me are the students who are like, yeah, like we're going to have a great day no matter what comes in. And I'm like sitting there exhausted and I'm like, yeah, today's going to be a good day.
Maybe. Students complaining is a pet peeve. You are not in a position to complain.
It like really gets under, and I try really hard. One of the things that I was scared of is like, I did not want to be the resident who's mean to the students. And like all my co-residents were like, man, I don't think you're mean to anyone.
That didn't bother me at all. I'll be the mean one.
I like really didn't want to be mean. I didn't want my exhaustion and my frustration with being on call or being a resident to like then be translated over to the student. Because like being a student is just the most awkward thing ever.
It's tough. It's tough.
So hard, but anticipating. So like if you see that every single time we're in the OR, I ask the nurse, do you need me to hold the leg for when you prep? And she says yes. And then I, as the resident, am holding one of the legs like with my glove and then doing something like texting a page on my phone at the same time. Like realistically, if you're just watching me do that, you should be doing that. If you see that between cases, I do my dictation and then I'm helping mop the OR so we can turn over faster and you're sitting scrolling on TikTok, you should be doing that. So like seeing things and like kind of picking it up, I think is a really big thing. Also, even if you don't like a program, there was an externship that I didn't love. It was a great program. It just wasn't a great fit for me. But like pretending that you love and are obsessed with that program every single day so that way you can learn the most from that program is huge. And then like keeping your mouth shut a little bit. Like I think students who talk poorly about the people that they work with or like other students or other residency programs, it's just a really bad look.
It is.
And I
don't know what they think they're going to accomplish, but I agree with you.
I think students get really, really comfortable with me really quickly. I think it's just my personality. And so they tend to tell me things that I don't think a student should really ever be telling a resident. Like I had someone show me their Tinder profile. And that's not great.
Right. There are boundaries here.
Yeah. And so like just remembering that like while the resident might feel like your friend, there's still someone evaluating you.
Yeah, I think that's good advice because like you said, the person that complained about not scrubbing in, instantly in my brain, I'm like, you're not going to be a resident here.
Yeah.
You complain about this, that, or not getting to do something, then all I'm going to say is, I don't like you, we're not going to be here.
Yeah.
If they're scrolling on their phone, you're not going to be here. Yeah. So the thing is, the good students are already going to be doing the right things and the bad students are going to continue to do the bad things. So it's hard for a bad student to become a good student because they don't know that they're doing the stupid thing. Otherwise, they wouldn't be doing the stupid thing in the first place.
Yeah.
But there are some little things like you said. And, you know, I remember from the article showing up
early. Yeah. Like,
don't ask to go home early. Show up early.
At 8:30 in the morning. And I was like, you know what? Go. Like,
yes.
see ya. have a great day. Like, I don't want to be working with you today if you're just going to be upset that I'm keeping you here.
That's the other thing is if the attending is like, yeah, why don't you get out of here? You're like, it's 9:00. You're like, that's not a good sign.
Yeah.
That's not a good sign. So
Yeah.
Don't ask to leave early. If they send you out, that's not a good sign, but don't ask to leave early.
I do sometimes
You'll know
send
when
my
it's time to
students
go.
home really early. I would like to disclaim this in case they're listening to it. And it's just that way I can work on my notes in silence. If you help me with rounding and I'm done, I genuinely mean to send them home.
Sometimes I send my students home at lunch, and it's mostly just so I can, catch up on things, or, I haven't seen the latest, thing on YouTube I wanted to watch. So
yeah. I will tell them like, hey, I'm going to put Gilmore Girls on while I write my note. Like, please don't talk to me for just like a little bit.
Let me focus. So what's been your favorite part of residency? I know it's only been a couple months, but what's your favorite part of residency?
I think the favorite part of my residency is like by far the people. I mean, I think I just get to work with the best group of attendings and the best group of co-residents. Like my first week of call, I had a different co-resident to like check on me every single day. I had different people bring me coffee or lunch, or like ask me how my sugars were doing, or like bring me dinner because they knew I was still stuck at the hospital. Dr. Dikis was like texting me at the end of the week and was like, I just saw how many surgeries you did this week. Are you doing okay? So I just think like I'm really, really far away from home, but like I feel less far because of the people I'm surrounded with. And like I just got such a good group. Like I just think we all really mesh well together, feel like a family. It's really nice. My favorite thing for myself, I think, is how much I've grown. Like just how much I've learned and how comfortable I feel. I remember like my first week of residency being like, am I terrible in the OR? Like, do I not have magical surgeon hands? Because I did a toe amp and I felt more confident in my toe amp as a student than I felt in my toe amp as a resident. My first toe amp as a resident. And it like ultimately came down to like, no, there was just like no joint space. Like it was just and it was a disarticulation. Like it was a harder toe amp than the like couple I had done as a student. But like now just being able to like confidently walk into the OR or confidently go back onto call and being like, it doesn't matter what they throw at me at this week. Like, first of all, I love that we only do call for a week at a time, because it's like, I can get through 7 days. Like it's 7 days. I know it's going to end. It doesn't matter if they work me every single month, like every single minute of those 7 days, I know I can make it Friday. And I know that like, if I need help, I can ask for help and I'm going to receive it. And like, that's totally okay. So I think the amount of confidence now that I have, like, okay, I have a week of call. Like, I know exactly what to do if the ED calls me. If gas comes in, I know what I need to do. I know who I need to call. Like, I am the doctor and I'm in charge of this patient's care. And I feel like I'm carrying things less with me. Like, I've gotten better with, like, my first couple weeks, it was really hard when I would, like, have to tell a patient, like, hey, like we're gonna have to do this amputation, and like watching them cry and like knowing that their A1C just wasn't that bad, like was something that weighed really heavily on me. And now I like have kind of shifted my mindset and I can have those types of meaningful conversations with patients and be like, hey, like we're gonna take care of this. Like I want to help you get better. And like we're gonna take care of this and like let's do our darndest to make sure this doesn't happen again. And like kind of building that relationship and looking at it differently, and then not taking that home with me and being like, I did my job. I did my best to help them. I planned the surgery. I scheduled the surgery. I have made sure the OR has all the materials. Like it's out of my hands now and I can't dwell on it anymore. And I think that's a big change from my first couple weeks of residency where like every day just felt really hard.
Well, everything is new.
Yeah.
And then with comfortability, you get some confidence that comes from that. And so it won't be another couple months that it's just going to feel like, why was I ever stressed out about this? Yeah. It's just because it's new and you don't really know what to do. But then you start doing it a couple times and it just feels pretty old hat. So I think that's a good outlook.
My first bedside IND, I like remember being like, oh my gosh, I have to like cut on this person by myself. And there's no one else here. And it's just me. And like, what if I don't evacuate enough pus? Like, what if I don't do this right? What if I pack it wrong? What if I overpack it? Like, and I like made the incision. I like packed it and I'm like freaking out. I'm shaking. My attending calls me and is like, hola, Santiago. Like, how did it go? Like, ¿qué pasó? He's so funny. And I was like, it went well. And he's like, send me some pictures. And I sent him pictures and he's like, great, looks great. Like, let's book him for the OR in a couple of days. Like, good job. And then like hung up. And I was like, that was it. Like,
Yeah.
It's not a big deal.
Yeah. Everything that is once a big deal soon becomes not so much a big deal.
Yeah.
So try not to let the little thing, the things that seem like such a big deal at the time, don't let them take over and control you for longer than it needs to, because it won't be long until it's not as big as it once was. So.
Yeah. Even like prepping for cases, I just had my first total ankle, which is so exciting, and I'm still shocked that I've helped with a total ankle as an intern. And I read the technique guide for that total ankle. Like, I read it, I wrote down all the steps, I wrote a fake off note to make sure I was prepared. And then I like got in the total ankle and I was like, they're going to pimp me. Like, my attending's going to pimp me and I need to know every single step. And it was like totally fine. And like, he was just asking me about like how I'm from San Diego and like that kind of thing. And like,
yeah,
it didn't matter. Like, I was totally over prepared and I'm glad I did, but it was fine.
Yeah, I don't like pimping students. It makes me uncomfortable if they don't know the answer. So I'd rather just talk about life and sports and other things like that. So anyways, that's awesome. It sounds like you're at a good program. You're having a great time. You're learning a lot, and congratulations on the blog. I would recommend people check that out, Present Podiatry. So thank you so much, Savannah, for joining me on this episode of Paw Patrol.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm a big fan of the podcast, and I'm honored you invited me on.
Absolutely. We'll have to have you back maybe next year and check in on second year, and you're gonna be like, oh yeah, all that stuff I was worried about. Oh yeah, I got that down. That's easy. Easy. All right. Thanks everyone for joining us on this episode of Paw Patrol with your host, Dr. Jeff Dikis. We'll see you guys next time.